And let's get started with the seminar, in which I'm going to talk about some applications for social and economic development. In particular, the area more in general is called ICT for development, or ICT for 4D, and it started in the 90s with the experimentation of assess centers, telecenters in rural areas. And the idea is that of using information and communication technologies to foster social and economic development of marginalized communities. Whereby marginalized, I mean some kind of, let's say, severe constraint of some kind. It could be lack of infrastructure, for instance, difficulty to accessing electric power rather than, let's say, connectivity, or it could be difficulty in accessing resources. It could be related to difficulty in poverty, or it could be poverty or some kind of other difficulty. And if you think a bit about the definition, in a sense, ICT 4D applies not only to what we would call the developing context, but also to, let's say, particular areas even in developed countries. So you may think, for instance, of situation in which some people may have difficulties in accessing food or some kind of other constraint. And the underlying assumption is that ICT can play a role in improving the condition of such communities. As I mentioned, it started in the 90s with the introduction of telecenters, so internet points basically in rural areas where people had the opportunity to, let's say, gather and use information for the most diverse purposes. And then it evolved with the, let's say, introduction of mobile phones to, let's say, more complex and articulated uses. So, this talk is really organized in three parts. In the first part, I would like to present some examples of applications in the ICT 4D area. And then I would like to tell you a bit about our experience in the sector and more in details about the experimentation and then the results we are having with this application, Bring the Food, which we are experimenting mainly in Italy. And finally, I would like to conclude by introducing and presenting the logical framework, which is a very well-known framework developed in the 60s, which is particularly interesting in our case because many of the, let's say, issues and, let's say, trial and errors we had to face with Bring the Food could have been, let's say, maybe tackled more efficiently with the logical framework. And then I would like to draw some conclusions. But just to go back to the main flow of the presentation, in a sense, if you think about ICT 4D, two main questions arise. And the first one is whether there is an opportunity or a market, if you want, for using ICTs in marginalized communities. And then the second is whether there is a use, whether it makes sense to use ICTs in a marginalized community. And I would like to give a brief answer to these two questions because if you think about it, let's say the vast majority of people live on less than $1,500 per year, and one may really question whether if you are really struggling to get at the end of the month, then whether ICT really makes sense for you. But there are two considerations which, in a sense, I would like to bring to your attention. And the first one related to, let's say, the opportunity, whether there is a market or not, whether there is an opportunity for everyone to use ICTs, is some data related to the diffusion of mobile phones in Africa and more in general in the world. And around, some statistics say that around 3/4 of the people in the world now, today, have access to a mobile phone. And even if we look at some developing contexts, like it could be Africa in general, nearly all Africans have access directly or maybe indirectly through friends to some kind of feature phone, a phone which can access internet. And the use, more important, the use of internet on mobile phones will increase in Africa 20 times in the next five years. So we are expecting to see a huge growth of internet usage in a developing context, which is going to be a lot bigger than the one we are experiencing in what we would call a developed context. And the second point is okay, whether ICT can make sense for people, marginalized people or marginalized contexts. And to do so, I'm kind of abusing the hierarchy of needs defined by Maslow at the end of the 60s, in the sense that at the end of the 60s, Maslow defined this hierarchy of needs in order to provide a conceptual model for motivation at work. And Maslow identified different motivators. Some of them would be what we would call extrinsic motivators, and some of them would be intrinsic motivators. But this, an extrinsic motivator would be, let's say, a safety need, whereas an intrinsic motivator would be actualization, realization, esteem, something like this. And according to Maslow, let's say, in order to motivate people, you need to ensure that the most basic needs are in place before you start, let's say, moving on to higher level needs. And that's the reason he defined this pyramid, which starts from very basic needs, such as physiological needs. And then it moves on with safety, and then starts targeting intrinsic motivators, like being part of something bigger, esteem, and self-actualization. So what I would like to do, I would like to give you some examples of applications which in a sense could be or can be positioned at different levels of this hierarchy of needs, in a sense to try and demonstrate that ICTs and mobile solutions for mobile applications today are addressing these different levels of the Maslow hierarchy. So the first level is that of physiological needs. I mean, it could be health, it could be something like this. And of course, there are many mobile health solutions. And one for all could be Med Africa, which is an application that allows people to, well, verify whether someone claiming to be a doctor is really a doctor or not, or locate your nearest hospital, which might be kilometers from where you live, and also provide services such as checking your medication or monitoring your symptoms. It is one of many applications in the ML sector, but in a sense, you may think that it is an application that helps you satisfy some of your what Maslow would call physiological needs. And of course, it works equally well in any context. And matter of fact, if you move one step up the ladder, I could tell you about this application